Hello, my name's Wayne Coe, and I'd like to present an alternative consolidation plan. This has been brought about by looking at the current consolidation plan being presented by the Superintendent of Schools. The Hudson Valley High Line is an alternative consolidation plan generated by the community at large. Using stakeholder interests as our common point, I talked to students, teachers, community members who live in the village, CCSD taxpayers, and the Board of Education, and developed an alternative consolidation plan. To explain it for those who don't know what is happening in the Chatham schools, let's take a look at previous consolidation plans around Columbia County, as well as the current situation in the CCSD, the Chatham Central School District. We have three schools. On the left side is the high school, 9 through 12, the elementary school, K through 4, and the middle school, 5 through 8. In the last year, in anticipation of consolidating the middle school, they've moved the 5th grade down to the MED, the central building, the elementary school. But this, historically, is how the facilities look. Their proposal is to close the Chatham Middle School. This is the winner in 2010 of the National School of Character. It beat out not only the two lower schools on the left, but every other school in the state. The reason for this extraordinary honor is because that particular building is beautifully designed for education. It has capacious classrooms, 40% larger than the classrooms in the other schools. It has a multi-floor design, which is interesting and involves the students in physical activity. It has a central location within the village where the community is always turning to it for usage. They're going to take 350 approximately children and put them down here in the valley on the left. It is a natural valley surrounded at the top by water and on the bottom by a railroad track. $2 million will be spent grinding up the landscape in a massive earthworks project to try to solve a 50-year-old intractable parking problem, because there's only one 2-lane blacktop going from Woodbridge in the middle down into the valley. Then they have a piecemeal project rebuilding many of the facilities that they're vacating just a short distance away at the Chatham Middle School. This shows how the flow of traffic works. On the bottom in blue is the CSX Railroad. The green represents a large body of water that encircles the school, and the only method of egress is one way out on the 2-lane highway. This is an unsafe situation. This is not up to contemporary standards. Since it was built back in 1974, the high school, this is the situation that's been grandfathered in that needs to be dealt with. Unfortunately, the leadership designing this plan, this state design plan, have not addressed another method of egress. They simply say, well, it would cost many millions of dollars. And yet they're repurposing these buildings to take many more children and not addressing the number one issue, safety. Consolidation goals. The reason this is happening is, of course, the tax cap freeze. They're trying to get money by laying off 5 employees, that is the administration, the principal secretaries at one of the schools. They want to solve this 50-year-old traffic problem down in the basin. They want to reduce capital projects, ideally. Currently, they're at $13.8 million. School abandonment depreciation, they're simply not addressing. When you take the last student, the last teacher out of a building, the taxpayers have no interest in maintaining that building. Neither does the Chatham Central School District. So naturally, they look for someone else to take it. Sometimes that's a community organization like the county or a village. Other times it just falls into private hands and becomes at risk. The school abandonment depreciation is the amount of money it would take to build that school today versus the 95% depreciation the minute the last child leaves, and it becomes no longer an educational institution. Generate positive interest for the CCSD to increase enrollment. That's a standard I've set for my plan. These are some of the schools in Columbia County, which is very specifically different than other counties because of its low population, that have been abandoned. Greenport School in Hudson. The Roland Jansen School in Copake. This building is now owned by a private party who's going to be grazing cattle on the land. They have no interest in maintaining the building. They said they stole it. This is Claverack School in Claverack. It isn't abandoned. It's currently being rent out to the courthouse while they do renovations at their court, but they'll be out of it within the year. It's been for sale for many years. This is Martin Van Buren High School. One could call it a success story, I suppose, in that the building, which might have fallen into abandonment, was given away for the price of a house to a third-party absentee landlord. Whether they will maintain that building, we don't know. But obviously, all the risk is now on one person, not on the entire community. Here's the Hudson Middle School, which was taken over by the county, but it's in Hudson. The county works out of Hudson, provides social services, and so they were able to take over this building and keep it in good shape. So it's a success story. But when they tried outside of the county seat, outside of Hudson, at Ocowamoc, this school has fallen into disrepair. Even though they spent $1.5 million, which is a fraction of what the building's worth, they weren't able to use it for social services because they don't have the population there. This is Martin H. Glenn. This is also one of the closed Kinderhook schools. It now holds the offices of Valatia, but that's a small fraction, 10-20% of the building. The rest is vacant. This I would call the most successful reuse. And they didn't vacate the high school. They simply turned it into a middle school. So they took one body of students out, they put a different body of students in. So if you were looking for a way to reuse a school, this, I think, offers the best hope in Columbia County. Commercial repurposing plan. This is very simple to do. You go down to a realtor, you show them the amount of square footage, and they put a price on it based on what commercial space sells for in the village. So a floor might be $15,000, the entire building $45,000 a month, the entire building per year $500,000. But there are no companies that are going to be renting the CMS for $500,000 a year. So instead of doing this, they don't do it. They do not go down and talk to these realtors because this is self-defeating. The Hudson Valley Highline. This is an alternative consolidation plan that community members and I have put together to try to talk about how these three schools might actually be brought together in the true meaning of the word consolidation, to bring together to make strong. It proposes a set of hallways, bridges, and drop-offs that unite all three buildings. So down in the basin, instead of closing the CMS on the right, you close the elementary school, but you close only as much of it as you need to close. You drain off the students from it, and you connect it by a hall called Highland Hall. Now the elementary school and the high school are united as a single facility. You no longer need an administration on the right side. Parents have said that they want their 7th and 8th graders segregated from the other high school, who's the 9 through 12. While the current plan does this in a very awkward and not very effective way, this clearly segregates the 7th and 8th on the right side at the old elementary and continues the 9 through 12 program in the high school as it's gone. This hallway is the same distance as one hallway of the high school. My son commonly goes both lengths of the high school when he transfers from one class to another each day. This is an 85-second leisurely walk through the most beautiful part of the campus. What might that look like? This would be a glass hallway, allowing teachers and students to pass from the east wing of the high school to the west wing of the campus. This lovely walk, inspirational if it were a glass hallway. I picture here a raised walkway. These are all called light construction in the architectural parlance. I'm not talking about laying long foundations and creating rooms. Examples of pedestrian walkways and hallways. Le Corbusier, the famous French architect's only US designed building, has pedestrian walkways, and that's on Harvard's campus, the Carpenter Building. It is the most popular building on campus because it addresses people's natural desire to walk and to be together. The New York High Line is certainly a favored location. Same thing, it has transformed property values throughout its length in New York City, simply because it allows people to walk and be together. The Hudson Valley High Line connects up with a level, ADA accessible path for young children, old people, and handicap all the way from Woodbridge down to the elementary, the MED. What might that look like? This would be a 10-foot wide hallway with a bike path and a pedestrian path. My daughter said, "Dad, you got to have a bike path," because the high school students are always going, "Get out of the way! Watch out," when they're driving their bikes by on the crumbling 2-person wide blacktop that currently exists. This is an example in Edinburgh, PA, right now of them doing the same thing. They're trying to overcome geographical stream, just like ours, a waterway, between two buildings, and do it in a way that, with inclement weather, people can walk comfortably and safely from one building to the other. Does it have to be steel? No, it could be wood frame. We live in Columbia County with some of the best woodworkers and post and beam builders in New York State. So here's an example of a wood trestle design, kind of like an old railroad. Chatham is a railroad town, which would take students clean, dry, and safe all the way to the elementary or down to the high school. This is the pedestrian overpass Highline parent drop-off parking. Down at the bottom left shows a pedestrian walkway across Woodbridge. In the morning, there's traffic congestion at this intersection at almost all times because the traffic is interrupted by the crossing guard to bring children safely across the street. If you had a pedestrian overpass and they were to step up on it and walk across, that congestion would be eliminated. What does this pedestrian overpass look like? It can look as beautiful as your imagination. Here's a beautiful one in Sweden. Wood, metal, inexpensive fluorescent lights, looking lovely in the evening or during the day. And here is the Hudson Valley parent drop-off. I'm looking at it and saying, how are users using this today? How are parents using it? They drive up the entire length of Woodbridge on both sides and they drop off their children. If it's snowing or raining, their children have to walk through that inclement weather all the way to the front door. Why couldn't, like a bus stop, this be covered? Now parents can drop their children and know they're going to be dry and safe all the way into the classroom. This is user-friendly. This is something the parents and the children will love. This shows that you're taking care of your primary stakeholders. Parking at the CMS. There are many opportunities to expand the parking at the CMS inexpensively. Behind the CMS at Harrington's is a piece of landfill. It's not suitable for building houses on, but if you were to pave it and turn it into the bus barn, then you would have an area behind the CMS contiguous to it that is as big as the high school parking lot overnight. Across the street is Steve Engel's house, which is a tragedy. It burned, but it could become an opportunity for him and the CMS. If they wanted to purchase that house, he also owns the house next to it. If a good price were made for both properties, he might be able to sell them, working with the village. They might be able to rezone them for parking purposes, and you would have a large, significant new parking area up on Woodbridge. The American Legion has 24 parking spaces at their place. I'm sure that a long-term lease during daylight hours from 7 o'clock to 4 o'clock would allow for you to have parking there very inexpensively. Cost. Currently, they're talking about two budgets. A non-consolidation budget of $6 million, a consolidation budget of $6 million plus $7.8 million. I believe that capital projects can be reduced by closing the MED because it has much higher capital projects than the CMS in the non-consolidation plan. For instance, in one wing there's asbestos tiled rooms. That doesn't have to be renovated at this time because you're draining off the student population from that area. There are other capital projects in the kitchen, which also can be avoided. In the implementation, you have three primary structures. Those are the hallway, the highline, and the parent drop-off. I believe that two of those, the ones that deal with traffic on Woodbridge and along School Road, can get major state grants, someone who works in the accounting department of the state grants. So I'm saying $4.5 million for these projects. With a savings of $4.3 million off the capital projects, you'd save $150,000 more a year, or 41%. A little bit about me. My name is Wayne Coe. I was born and raised in Southern California. I'm a writer, director, a designer. I went to Art Center College of Design. Some of my work, I designed the posters for Out of Africa, Back to the Future, Dune, and Brazil. I also worked on the title sequence to 7, which was listed in the New York Times as among the 100 top design achievements of the last century. I did the title sequence to the award-winning Dead Men on Campus, Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3. Argo, which you probably have seen recently, has an opening sequence, some of my artwork's in that. I have a long history of working on projects of different budgets, bringing together disparate interests and elements from clients to artists to directors to have fruitful project outcomes. This is a feature film I directed called Grim Prairie Tales. It was $1 million budget, approximately $700,000 for the film, $300,000 for distribution. And I did the CASE award-winning Art Center recruitment video, which was best video for the year it came out. I have experience working with projects from $80,000 to $1 million.
Throughout the presentation process, members of the board and the superintendent have come to the community and told them that the board exclusively is given the power to implement the consolidation plan. They have the power to ignore the community. They have the power to take 360 kids and put them into harm's way down in the valley with one method of egress. They have the power to slap the taxpayers in the face, who for 25 years they've been appealing to build up and fix the middle school so that it's now fully ADA compliant, asbestos remediation, has air conditioning, that they have the power to take the last student and the last teacher out of it, end that building's life as a school building. They also have had the power to exclude the community from the very beginning of this design process, to exclude the stakeholders, the students, the parents, the community from being polled before the study, during the study, and during the design process. It's only during presentation that they've allowed the public to see the plan. And the public has been forthright in the focus groups, through public petitions, through newspaper editorials in the Columbia paper and the Chatham Press, that this plan is destructive to community, that it's unsafe, that it's expensive. But they do have the power to railroad it through. Is that wise? Is that what we expect of the Board of Education? And what will be the outcome of them doing so? I believe that the stakeholders in the community, the students, the parents, the taxpayers, know their best interests and should have been involved from the very beginning of this process. That we can achieve all the goals that the Board of Education set out to do, to save money, $600,000 to $800,000, that we can solve a 50-year-old intractable traffic problem, that we can reduce the capital projects for the taxpayers, that we can avoid school abandonment depreciation and generate positive interest in the CCSD to increase enrollment and to make our students safer. Thank you.